Three critical things here to continue with the net zero campuses. Implementation is always very important, but financing is sometimes even more important, as we already said a little bit, that without financing nothing is going to happen and financially viable ideas will only be implemented. But campuses are places where innovation can happen, unlike in the general societies where innovation is not always considered something that can be done by the people, right? Implement on campus initiatives. This guide includes a separate and richly detailed section to cover the implementation of university specific on campus initiatives, which are central to this document, which we'll come back to later on. This section covers 5 broad action areas and has multiple initiatives that cover 5 key sources of emission. We'll talk about energy, mobility, facilities, waste minimization and recycling, and value chain emissions. So this is kind of a executive summary here, but we'll come back to that later on. So you can also click here on the hyperlink implementing net zero on campuses for more information on the types of initiatives required for net zero on campuses. Innovate and amplify change. So innovation is one thing, but you want to also be able to amplify it out to the society and transfer solutions, which is very critical. The list of campus initiatives included in the guide form a starting point for net zero campus. A university or college can always play a leading role in taking net zero initiatives and concepts beyond campus by amplifying its success stories and driving knowledge and research in climate change. Universities and colleges are uniquely positioned to contribute to research and development of net zero initiatives, translating the knowledge and lessons learned before implementing them into the community. This guide has detailed innovation and amplification of change in the following sections that we'll come back to. So explore innovative financing for net zero initiatives. It's important to say we need finance, but campuses can also be able to innovate financing options themselves, right? The UN Governmental Panel on Climate Change estimates that between $1.6 to $3.8 trillion US is required annually to avoid warming exceeding 1.5 degrees C. Yet in 2019-2020, flows of climate-related finances only approximated $600 billion US. Unsurprisingly, financing of net zero action plans have been identified as a key challenge by universities and colleges. It's particularly difficult for universities and colleges in climate vulnerable regions to raise funds. So imagine that universities are always doing research and writing papers on what's missing in global climate action. The students may be protesting, etc. But implementing and innovating on campus and trying to finance it is going to give the students first-hand experience of what it is that international agencies or governing bodies like the UNFCCC face when they're trying to do this between so many countries, trying to negotiate different interests of their own and facing different barriers and so on and so forth. Okay, where was I? This calls for the setup of a robust finance team to identify and evaluate innovative financing solutions on campuses. The financing solutions pioneered by leading universities and colleges can be used as financing benchmarks also. Some of the key financing options for net zero projects are listed on page 26, which we look at here. Financing options for climate related projects. So you have power purchase agreements, green revolving funds, grants, schemes and loans from public, private or non-profit sector, green bonds, endowments, alumni contributions, student fees or campus green funds, offset credit and carbon markets. Okay, so let's come back and read a few of these. Description and example. So power purchasing agreements are mid to long-term contracts with utility companies that enable financing of renewable energy systems without access to the capital outlay. So examples: 2015, universities across the US had facilitated over 100 megawatts of solar power through PPAs. Monash University and ARENA PPA to install a microgrid. And for Green Revolving Fund, you have Harvard University's Green Loan Fund as an example. For grant schemes and so on, you have Deferred Engineering Procurement Construction Loan obtained by Aga Khan University. And green bonds, you have University of Tasmania to finance a new low carbon campus, and Monash University climate bond. Okay, so I didn't read the descriptions much, but you can imagine what they are. For example, Green Revolving Fund is a fundamental principle of green revolving funds can be applied on any of the other funding mechanisms used by the university or college. So it's basically an internal fund that provides financing to parties within an organization to implement energy efficiency, renewable energy, and other sustainability projects that generate cost savings. These savings are redeployed back into the GRF itself. Okay, there's always an argument about whether just going after energy efficiency is effective enough, but there are calculations showing that everything we use now has an efficient version if we deploy all of them, from appliances to vehicles to building energy uses and lights and so on and so forth, heating, cooling. Then in fact we can make a significant reduction in greenhouse gases as well as progress towards sustainability. Endowments, you know what they are. So Cambridge University Endowment Fund is an example. Endowment funds, as I mentioned before, Harvard, Columbia, Ivy Leagues, even many Indian IITs have lots of endowments, but this is talking more specifically about endowment fund for sustainability. Alumni, obviously alumni can do a lot if they have interest in this, and in at the Indian Institute of Technology, Bombay, there are alumni who have set up specific sustainability funds. In fact, one of them is an anonymous donor who set up a massive amount of funds, and there is a couple who also are funding a chair position and other sustainability initiatives for training undergrads and so on. Here the example: University of Queensland, Australia has an alumni network that supports sustainability initiatives and research. Student fees or green campus green funds. This again depends on whether you have the authority to raise such funds via fees and green campus green funds. Governments often need to allow tuition raises or fee rises and so on and so forth. Nonetheless, the Green Initiative Fund of University of Berkeley is an example, which is in fact a state university, and they have obviously done it. Offsetting credits and carbon markets, you know what they are: paying somebody to reduce emissions for you by planting trees and other measures, maybe even putting carbon into the ocean, etc., which are coming along now with private entities. So the Ball State University partnered with Chevrolet's offset program is doing that as well. Finally, monitor and evaluate, which is a very important step of any adaptation, mitigation and sustainability program, because unless you have indices to monitor and evaluate progress and have flexibility to go back and correct things that are not working or that are maladaptations and so on, or have consequences that you didn't plan for, then you are not going to have an effective, efficient and goal-driven agenda for accomplishing the sustainability in this case. Monitor, evaluate and learn from net zero initiatives. The journey to a net zero campus is a continuous cycle of improvement, so it's kind of an iterative process. This process includes both assessing the existing net zero initiatives on campus and a review of the current context. The situation would consider not only changes to the campus context but external changes in net zero technology and research. So if new technology comes along that can be adopted, you should have the flexibility to replace old technology and move forward. As with any other project though, net zero initiatives on campus require periodic review and transparent evaluation. Regular reviews ensure that net zero initiatives adapt and leverage new developments in climate science, the science-based initiatives, the regulatory environment, and innovation in finance and technology. Reviewing university or college campuses progress towards net zero will also bring in more accountability and transparency in action. Key considerations for net zero evaluations themselves: has the climate commitment been allocated to a specific department, school, or working group, and what agency do they have on decisions and review? Agency is, of course, again a social science psychology term, where if you have the ability and willingness to act, then you have the opportunity to act. Okay, what are the key monitoring and evaluation indicators, both financial and non-financial, and are there mechanisms for tracking this data over time? How often will the initiatives be reviewed and why? Net zero, manage in data. So I have something placed there. What did I do here? Let me try to. Is net zero engaged in data the team has to be engaged in data collection, decision making, and amplification that we mentioned before. So let me go back and read that and make sure I didn't screw that up. I don't know why it looks so bizarre. Maybe the print itself was bad and I didn't notice before. Has there been consideration for an external evaluation process to ensure a robust, unbiased review of progress? What consequences or processes will be put in place in the event that goals are not met or must be recalibrated? Will savings from implementing net zero initiatives be used in further decarbonization initiatives? So this is very critical when you do tax and the spend, or in raising fees and green funds through such charges. That collected income must go back to decarbonizing and going towards net zero. How will key stakeholders be engaged? How will the stakeholders be involved in co-designing these initiatives? How is net zero embedded in the performance evaluation of senior leaders and relevant staff? So somebody has to be held accountable to make sure that the system in fact is moving forward. So we'll come back and look at best practices and resources to implement net zero campus initiatives, and there obviously you have to look at areas for net zero target actions, and we will do that in the next podcast. Let me make sure that I will correct what seemed jumbled in words in this particular. When you look at the YouTube videos, I'm not sure you can actually read what's on the screen. You're mostly probably listening to me, but nonetheless I need to have text and figures that are very clear, right? So let me do that. Okay, so let's correct this error right here. So this table I had bungled up. I don't know how it happened. The text is just fine. I just somehow messed it up while copying. So we're looking at key considerations for net zero evaluations, and we had one of the items here. Who is engaged in data collection, analysis, decision making, and communication? So data collection is always important if you want to monitor and evaluate. Analysis, you need a team for sure. Decision making is then you do evaluation and it indicates modifications needed for implemented actions, or for planned actions, or for financing and so on. So somebody has to be in charge of making decisions, and the whole thing has to be communicated within the university community, as well as, let's say, to the board of governors or the external community or publications, showing how things are actually working in terms of sustainability implementations. Okay, so let's leave this here and we'll come back and continue. Okay.